Okay, so I did promise you that I would put up a video that was intended to help you with last week's journal assignment. That is generating different thesis statements based on your chosen controversy topic. So I'm going to go ahead and look at one that is really shoved into the forefront right now, and that is, of course, the horrific attacks on Paris by ISIS maniacs. So this is a very complicated issue, which it's so easy to oversimplify and thereby probably create all sorts of damage instead of actually trying to remedy the situation as best we can. And there are no easy solutions, are there? Well, part of this is focus. Whether or not in a short essay you can actually deal with a huge issue like what kind of policy should be adopted in light of the Paris attacks is a difficult question, because there are so many subtleties and difficulties involved in this. If you launch an attack on a country, rather than trying to isolate different factions such as ISIS within the country, then of course you're making war on that country. You're conducting war on that country. If you say, well, let's just, as Donald Trump said, let's just bomb them all. Well, then of course you unleash bombs, and those bombs undoubtedly do all kinds of collateral damage, and destroy not only the targets that perhaps you were aiming for, but kill innocent civilians inevitably, and misfire and hit hospitals and so on, and generate the kind of hatred that is just exactly what these ISIS fanatics want to have happen. Then of course their propaganda machine can say, well, look, see, the Christian world is attacking Islam. So I don't know exactly how you want to focus this, but there are rather ingenious ways to focus it, and very serious issues that can be very sharply focused. I'm going to just pick one. There's something that's been bothering me a great deal that I might want to write about. There are two camps or factions politically that want to name what these fanatics do differently. One faction, led by people like Ted Cruz on the Republican side, desperately want to name this, and all actions like this, radical Islam. This is radical Islam. It's not just ISIS. The other faction, really led by people like Secretary of State John Kerry and many others, want to refer to these actions as the actions of psychopathic, deranged, murderous individuals, and want to remove it from the religious context. So I don't know what your position is, but you can generate a thesis that works along those lines. And we're trying to get around these kind of, well, let's just take revenge and knee-jerk reactions, I think, because those are usually more harmful than productive. In any case, I think all sides would agree that action has to be taken, and the action has to be firm, it has to be strong, it has to be effective. But what constitutes that is another matter. So let's say I just want to take that issue, that and that alone. That's what focus means. And I want to generate thesis statements about that issue. So, for example, if I want to take and create a thesis along those lines, remember we have the subordination possibility, using words like although. Although Ted Cruz and many others who favor his point of view wish to refer to actions like those attacks in Paris as the actions of Islamic radicalists, many want to isolate these actions and refer to them as the actions of murderous psychopathic individuals. So then we're looking at what, you can even put the word should in there. if you want to. Now, again, you can take either position. I'm not saying take one position or the other. I have my views, you have your views. But all of us have to look at both sides of the issue, because our strongest arguments are only as good as our responses to opposing arguments. And that's what you need to realize about these papers. They are only as good as opposition arguments and how we tackle those, how we respond to those. So if I were to revise that statement and I want to put my position in that statement, I would say, after the although part of it, comma, then I would put something along the lines of, these attacks should be referred to as the actions of psychopathic, deranged murderers, if you want to put it that way. I have to say, it personally bothers me to see news reports, and this is, again, just my position, but news reports that have the headline, "Terror in Paris," terrorist. And this is what the perpetrators of these horrific acts want to have put in place. Look, we created chaos. Look, we created terror. I would prefer to say murder. I would prefer to see that headline, "Murder in Paris. Murderers kill innocent civilians." Well, that's just, more than semantics, but that's one way of saying that. You can use the word "despite," but what I'm trying to do here is, when I write the thesis, get words like these, right within the thesis, or, semicolon end. However, what's the reason for that? The reason for that is I have to include the opposition side right within my thesis statement. So I've already set up my essay so that I'm recognizing there is an opposition. I'm not just firing from the hip and going off on my own point of view. So you don't have to write a thesis that way. That's called subordination. But it's a very powerful way to write a thesis, because it shows that you immediately are going to be, or try to take, a balanced approach. And if you're going to talk about bombing or policy issues, then you have to get into specifics of those. And I would say avoid the fantasies of imagining that simply carpet bombing or bombing wholesale is going to solve the situation. Simply declaring all-out war is going to solve the situation. Simply recruiting allies is going to solve the situation. I would say that you've got to get into all kinds of specifics along those lines. And focus your thesis as much as possible if you want to take a very, very powerful controversy like this. Preventative investigations. We do know that the ringleader, the quote, brains, if you want to put it that way, behind the Paris operation, was suspected in at least 3 prior terrorist acts, one of which was ludicrous, because the man who was going to carry out the bombing of a church shot himself in the leg on the way to do the deed. And so you might want to look at, could this have been prevented? But again, that's that old 20/20 hindsight. So I'm hoping that helps you just a little bit get this on the way and gives you some more angles and possibilities that you can take. So that's one way to go about stating a thesis.